All right, guys, this is Davon Brantley with the Creative Mindset, the finest artist of fine artists, and we'll be right with you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Creative Mindset. Yes, you already know what it is. We got a very special guest today. This is an artist, true artist at his core. I do not want to box him in because we have a painter, a sculptor, a drawer, even creates murals. And I can just see years from now, it's not going to be, do you have a Picasso? It's going to be, you ain't got a Brantley in your house? Creative Mindset family. Welcome.
Davon Brantley.
Hey,
How's it going, y'all?
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, brother, for coming.
Got a little tongue-tied there,
thank
man.
you.
I appreciate you for coming. I even got the water and still got tongue-tied, man.
Cool.
Man, so how you feeling today, man?
I feel good. The sun's out. It's been bright. Me and my wife, my daughter, we were able to, get some ice cream, coffee, things like that. Enjoyed the day. Got some fresh new tires, like I said before the podcast started. So it's been a good day. It's been a good day.
Amen to that, man. Your art is crazy, man. And like, I just want to know what your foundations are in drawing, because I see that you graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go to like the School of Art as well?
No, actually, I didn't really have like a art school background before deciding to go to the Cleveland Institute of Art. I didn't really have art classes. I just always did art my whole life. And so I was always like pausing the TV just to draw Spider-Man because we would pop it into the DVD player and stuff. But yeah, the Cleveland Institute of Art technically is my only experience with like an institution for the arts.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you start? Like, how old were you? You remember?
So to get out of the cliche, I started when I was 3, blah, blah, blah. I think I would say I seriously started probably after my grandmother's passing, when I was in high school. So it was like my junior year in high school. And I was like, learning about how to sketch dynamic drawings of the anatomy, going to the library. I would teach myself like animation and illustration. But once she passed, I like took it very seriously. So I just kept disappearing out of the house. My mom was like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "I'm at the library. I'm just trying to learn how to do art and figure out how to get better at it." And I just navigated into portraiture naturally because I think I was trying to capture that essence of the intimacy of, a person, and how to relate to them and connect with people on more of an individual basis. And so that's kind of like how it started was, my grandmother was a very important part of my life. She was a great matriarchal figure. We lived with her and she raised us essentially. And she told me never to give up on art. And so once that happened, I was like, yeah, I got to take this seriously. I got to keep going.
Do you remember what was the first thing that you ever drew that was like, okay, yeah, I'm good at this?
Man, that's a hard one. I would say the first thing I ever drew where I was like, yeah, I'm hard, was I think when I was in 3rd grade, we had like this art competition and they just gave us these random coloring pages. So some of them were like SpongeBob, some of them were Dragon Ball Z, and I got a Dragon Ball Z one and it was of Gohan. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm about to go crazy on this. And so I started adding like lightning bolts to it and I was like, shading, giving dimensionality or whatever. I ended up losing and I was mad. And I was like, what? I added all this stuff on it. And you like your little kid brain, you don't understand nothing. You just like mad and throwing a tantrum. But I like literally took it home and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna add some more stuff to it. And then from that point on, I was like, yeah, now I'm gonna do my own type of cartoons. I'm gonna make my own coloring book. So I was like kind of stubborn about it.
So what did the winner draw?
The winner just colored in SpongeBob. That was it. They didn't add nothing to it. Just colored in. They just colored in the lines. I like added stuff to it, but yeah, that was like the first time where I was like, yeah, I really like art, and I was like very young, and I just kept going, and so I started doing like Ninja Turtles, more Dragon Ball Z stuff. I almost got kicked out of like 4th grade because I was selling Dragon Ball Z drawings to kids and bringing home pockets of money. And my mom was like, where are you getting this from? What are you doing? And then like the school called my mom and they're like, yeah, he can't do that. And I was
Hating on the young man's hustle.
Yeah, they was like, yeah, he can't do that because he's like, I had like a little booth that I would set up outside of the school and everything, and people would ask me to draw like a Super Saiyan 3000 Goku or whatever, and I would do it.
Because
and
that long
stuff.
hair was crazy.
That long
when
hair
we
was
see the
crazy.
pictures, especially in the spiral.
Yeah, when it go in a spiral and it's like all spiky and stuff, like people love that. And yeah, from that point on, I was just like, yeah, this is something I got to keep up with.
So when did you get into painting?
So painting came later. Painting didn't come until probably a little bit of my senior year of high school, and then when I got into the Cleveland Institute of Art. So like, a really good friend of mine now that I dated in high school, their grandmother or aunt, they had gave me like this huge box of like oil paint. And I had never used oil paint before. And I was like, oh, I'm going to test it out, play around with it, see how it makes me feel. I was using it very wrong because it was getting all over my hands, which as an oil painter, and for those artists who are oil painters out there, you know to wear gloves using oil paint because it's very toxic. And so I had stopped using it because it was making my hands tingly and I didn't understand why. I was like, I don't know why my hands feel like this and it's hard to wipe it off. And so painting came a little bit later when I became like maybe a sophomore at the Cleveland Institute of Art. And I was like, I kind of want to push what I'm doing. Like, I love drawing. I love charcoal. I use it a lot now. And I kind of want to expand and challenge myself and see what I can do with paint that I can't do with drawing, or how those two can relate to each other. And so I didn't technically start painting until like my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do want to know is I noticed that your work, is it portraiture? Is that how you pronounce it? All right, portraiture. What made you go into that style? Because like when I look at it, it kind of, when I first seen it, it made me think of escapism. But then it's not even escapism. It could be imagination and you just putting yourself in multiple dimensions in different scenarios.
Yeah. And so what got me into portraiture was the fact that I loved that we're able to tell a story, not just with abstraction, but just listening to other people's stories and getting an idea of who they are, and being able to capture that within an actual like portrait or canvas piece or drawing. I thought that was important to me. But I also got into more of the self-portrait realm because like of my trauma from my childhood. I felt like I never had agency after that point over like myself and my body and how I viewed myself and how others viewed me. And so specifically with like self-portraiture, it was me giving a call back to owning who I am and letting people get an inside look of my mental landscape so that they could also connect with that. Because I know my experiences may not just be my own. People may share them, and people may have certain conflictions with their emotions or certain subjects that they want to talk about. But I'm like more of an open book. And I think it's because of me going back into self-portraiture and gaining that agency back. And so it's a combination of me being interested in the stories of other people and how to tell those stories. And then a therapy session later, understanding like, hey, maybe your story needs to be focused on for a little bit since you focus on everyone else all the time. And then also I'm like there. And so like, as far as like getting a model, it's very easy for me to pose because, you know, I have the free time that I need and I can do whatever pose I want.
Yeah, because I seen you start posting some of your reference photos and I thought that was kind of like fire to even have yourself as a template for at least the pose and then just change it completely to whatever it is that you wanted. Like the photo with you with the dog. Like, what were you looking at? Like when you at in that painting, just what was the painting's the focus supposed to be? And I also didn't notice it wasn't any pupils in the eyes either.
Yeah. And so like with that piece, that was amazing because like that was a part of a series that I was talking about with all the emotions that I had revolving around my grandmother's death. And I wanted to pivot into the spectrum of anime because that is something that also was back in my childhood, something she would also watch me watch and be engaged in. And anime tells these really great imaginative stories that are super dramatic. The poses are always overextended, and there's so much emotion in it that I wanted to connect it back to the emotions present with my grandmother's death and grief in general. And so when I came up with the pose, I literally was up in my studio space, set up some lights, backdrop, and everything, and a camera setup just like what we're seeing today. And I was like, I need to force my back to go. And I need to figure out how to manipulate my body in order to do that, so I can show that there's some type of force pulling me back, but there's also this direction with the character facing forward, and his neck is kind of like out here. So it's like he wants to move forward, but something that is also holding him back at the same time. And it may be himself. And so that was where that pose kind of came from. And luckily I'm a gymnast, so I was able to bend my back, actually how you see in the piece itself. And so that's not me like manipulating it too much. And then the Rottweiler that people see in there is supposed to be the manifestation of my grandmother as a spirit animal. Because that was one of my guardian animals when I was a baby. It would sleep under my crib, protect me. Nobody could really get near me if that dog was by me, and it protected me as a child. And so I made the Rottweiler a representation of my grandmother. And so when you see that piece, those are those two connecting parts. And with the pupil, I just wanted it to be more open. You know, the eyes are the window to the soul. And so I didn't want to give too much detail within the eyes. I wanted people to kind of interject what they think he's seeing out in the distance, because he's literally just facing profile wise.
Just looking at your work, I just felt a deep connection of transformational, the transformational journey from boyhood to manhood. So it was a lot of vulnerability in the art, a lot of distinguished portions that I can consciously relate to my own upbringing. With that being said, on your Instagram page, you have a lot of behind the scenes of how you actually develop the art. Is that consciously done? Is that the way that you want to resonate with your audience and, you know, draw them in to try to understand where you're coming from?
Yeah, I intend that fully. I love giving people an outlook on how I build up from one layer to the next. And so I'm very intentional about my practice. I don't try to be super mysterious about it. I know other artists, you know, want to be shrouded in that mystery of like, I don't want anyone knowing how I develop these pieces or where they're coming from or what references I'm using. But for me in particular, it's important that the audience sees how I'm going step by step with each process. So they'll be able to look at a journal that I have where I'm writing stuff, and I'll like post that on Instagram or on my story. And then I'll also show them like, oh, this is how I put my grommets into my paper. This is why I use grommets. And this is why I typically have my work unframed. And this is how I start off with the underpainting, or even before the underpainting, this is how I start off with the drawing first, because that's my baby. And so you get to get that sense of that foundational element, which connects back to the theme of my work being like a growth aspect. So you're seeing this form from a concept into like an actual physical medium that's solidified now. And the same with that, going from boyhood to manhood, you get to see every step of that process, which we typically don't get to see with a lot of people. Not a lot of people know my background and what I've been through, but with my art, I'm able to show that.
And I feel like that proves that you're emotionally conscious and that you have a consistent introspection of who you are. That's why your ability to push out art the way you can and know exactly what you're trying to depict, that's very pivotal. I want to backpedal a little bit when you say things that you've been through. I think we all can share some kind of childhood trauma or something that we've been through that resonates within our artistic expression. how did you utilize your art as therapy? Because I feel like for you to do it so young and, find your affinity with how you create, you also were conscious on how to self-heal,
Yeah.
even without having the proper terminology to say this is my healing practice.
I think it started. So while I was in college, I was going through a lot with, crazy relationship, not understanding myself in general, and really having repressed memories as well too that became unlocked as I continued to go to therapy. And the way that, thankfully, I had a good therapist. The way that they were explaining to me, like, hey, I think you already utilize art as a vehicle in order to express yourself and to try to understand who you are as a person. I think you should fully immerse yourself into it. And they actually talked to me about something called psychodrama, which is where certain psychologists would put people, in a room and they would reenact certain elements from a situation that they went through. It was very controversial back then because they weren't doing it correctly. But you would basically reenact the feelings that you felt and that were present within that situation. And that would be a form of alleviation. And so I was like, I never heard of that before. And I started doing a deep dive and doing more research on it. And I was like, well, this is something I'm interested in. I don't know why, but I want to kind of put it in my artwork because, if this is a healing process for me, and if this is something that I'm gravitating to, I need to have it present and I want to make sure it's present. And so the way I approached it was that I did all the research, read a bunch of books from the CIA library on childhood development, psychodrama, articles about psychodrama. And then I started thinking about like, how can I incorporate certain elements from this very physical, in-person thing into something that is stagnant or a snapshot. Right. And so I started using color and I started utilizing my knowledge that I gained from college about color theory and understanding what color does to a person, what mood it can put them in, and a sense of utilizing evocative objects within my work as well too. So like with an evocative object being like, everybody has probably had the experience of sitting at their grandmother's computer and it having that Windows desktop, right? Everybody knows what that looked like. You probably have that image in your head right now. Right. And so I take that and then I'll put that as a background in my composition and my work. So now it brings you back into that realm and that world. And so those are kind of like the elements that I was playing with when developing this work, and how I got interested in that self-healing process was the fact that I can take certain key moments from my life and place them in my work, and it can put me back in that space, but I'm not actually in that space. There's a barrier. So now I'm critiquing it because I only have a snapshot of it. Now I get to think about, hey, how did you feel sitting at your grandmother's computer desk while she was going through health complications? How did you feel knowing that her favorite color is red, and now you're utilizing red in your color palette even more, and it's more present in certain areas? What feeling is that supposed to give off to the viewer, along with what you're criticizing as well too? And so I know this seems like a stream of consciousness. I'm trying to get it back to the point, but
following.
But that was how I utilized it as like this self-healing process, was the fact that, I'm able to confront all of these things and not hide from them. So I'm going to write everything down, like, hey, this is a situation I went through. This is how I remember it. These are certain things that stood out. These are certain feelings that stood out. This is how my body felt. This is how the hairs were standing up on, my arms and my legs at that point. This is how blood was pooling in my fist or in my feet at that moment. And now I'm going to turn those symbols into keys that I can use for each piece. And so every character that I depict is going to depict whatever situation that I'm talking about. And
Uh,
so if there's like a blue dude in there, like, he represents sadness. And the reason why is because he has a certain color palette for that. He has a certain environment, and he will always have a certain wardrobe. Or if he's representing death, that's going to be the same thing. And so that's how I kind of connected it to my healing process, because it was able, where I was able to acknowledge certain things about myself and how I felt about myself, that I was like, maybe I should work on that. And then I'll do it.
I think the distinction, just to cap this off, that the distinctive thing and what you were saying was you gained the words from the expression.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've heard that from an artist, that they poured into the art, but in return, the art gave them back emotions that they suppressed in order to convey them to other people.
Yes.
Verbally. That's dope, bro.
Yes.
So that's fire. I like how the steps that you take to bring it to real awareness, self-awareness, revisited those things, and as well as letting them out and letting them go for others to interpret it, as well as see. Here at the Creative Mindset, we like to talk about mental health. So while you were healing yourself and you were revisiting those traumas, describe to us that process on how it was influencing and affecting like your artistic expression.
That's like a interesting question that I think I get a lot, because a lot of people are like, you're tackling like certain subjects that I would be afraid of, or it would probably trigger me, or it'll just make me not want to create artwork anymore. And for me, I feel like it's only given me more gas in the tank for it. And I don't think I notice it as much. And so like, if I'm thinking about a very traumatic situation that happened in my life, and I go into the studio and I'm like, I'm about to create like 10 pieces about it, I think my mind and my body just kind of like dissociates a little bit, and it just goes into art mode. And like whatever feelings or emotions that are supposed to be present in each one of those pieces, I think I allow it to just take over and express itself through the medium. And so like, even my wife has noticed this. She's like, sometimes I hate going in your studio because you just are like so quiet, or you'll have like this face and you don't want to talk. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But it's just like, I'm just in that mode of like, I have to be present with this piece, and I have to allow it to communicate in the ways that it needs to. And sometimes that's just dead silence for me, where there's no music in my studio space and my face literally looks like, get out of here sometimes. And so I think I just allow it to breathe and communicate in the ways that it needs to where it doesn't affect me after or even before. It's just that process is happening. Yeah.
I feel like with the names of your pieces, you are very literal in what you wanted to be. Even the one that said "greed," it was only one that I felt like didn't resonate with the piece, and it was the one that said "same," and it had almost like an orange or copper covering the mouth, and I'm like, what does that mean? It was made in charcoal.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that piece?
That piece was very. Hi everybody, it's Davon Brantley. So as you can see at this point of the Creative Mindset interview, I actually started going off on the wrong piece. And so they have like a similar like description, except with this one, I definitely misinterpreted the copper portion of it, and I immediately went to a piece that I usually don't get to talk about. And so I think my mind was like dead set on that for some reason. But Same is a piece that was about the relationship between me and my sister's experiences growing up. Being like the oldest son, there was a lot of privileges that I was privy to as far as like what I could get away with, even though I, didn't really take advantage of that. But in comparison to my sister and her experiences growing up, it was very much like flipping a coin and having like a side that was even more complex and had to deal with another type of journey than what I would have went through.
And to add on the fact that, I am extremely light skinned, my sister is not. And so it gives this like dichotomy of the fact that, within my community in general, and, specifically with my family, I felt like I was treated as like the golden boy, which was very ironic because I am this like golden colored being. And while my sister was, labeled as the black sheep of the family growing up because of what she was going through and how she was acting out, which it was always confusing to me because like me and my siblings have like a very close relationship. And so whenever I would talk to them about things and whenever we would just, interact with each other, I always felt like, we were the same. Even though I was definitely like different more on the artistic side and the weirdness of anime and blah, 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 I always felt like, there was no reason to treat her differently within a space that we both, coexisted, and a family that, would want to make us thrive and prosper in the future and set us up. But that wasn't the case for my sister's experience, unfortunately, with growing up. A lot of beef and bumping heads with not only our mother, but other individuals in our family. And so when I created Same, I just really was thinking about, that relationship and how as a society we kind of do that anyway, no matter if it's in the job field, no matter if it is with people approaching certain individuals for relationships and how they treat those individuals in a relationship, how they treat certain individuals who are in the same location differently as well, when it comes to certain experiences and interactions, because I know I've dealt with that a lot, being in my type of environment. And so with Same, I wanted to tackle that and relate it to a geode, which with a geode, on the outside, a lot of people aren't really excited about that part, which, is also a little bit darker, a little bit more rough. It's not like super glittery or shiny or super vibrant. It's that outer crust that we see that we don't really put on a pedestal the same way as we do when we crack it open and we see like this wonderful array of like very light, vibrant colors that sometimes are iridescent or, just bouncing off each other and flickering. And so I thought about relating that to like these real world experiences of like colorism, because that is what happens. It's like we come from these wonderful array of different types of tones and textures and grit and everything else, but we don't highlight them in the same capacity, which always bothers me, because like we see this outer layer here, which is also equally beautiful and should be upheld and houses the actual like pretty thing that we see in the center, but we don't really acknowledge it as much. And so with Same, you'll see like a strip going through the giant head that's on the tone piece of paper. And it's very like sepia tone, super vibrant, things like that. But you also get to see this rich, deep, dark charcoal rendering of the rest of the head and the face. And so there's only a sliver of the sepia so that it doesn't take over the entire composition and we're not like super hyper fixated on it, but it is definitely present, but we really get to enjoy in the most of the capacity the deep rich charcoal drawing that coexist in the same composition. And so I wanted that to really relate to the title of Same, is that these two things can exist on this same level. They both have certain qualities to them that make the composition sing and work. And there is not a difference of how I'm handling both. Both are handled with a certain level of care and detail that does not take away from each other. It actually makes them mold together a little bit more. Though it has like a more minimalist approach with having this like sepia band go across the face, which would usually distract from a piece. I believe it had balance with that. And so we get to see the cracking open of this like head in a sense in relation to a geode, so that we can learn to admire both of these techniques in the same capacity. And so, sorry, I talked about the wrong piece in the actual podcast. But those are a lot of the thoughts that I was thinking of when it came to same and, coming up with a title for it. That was just what I landed on. And so it was the only thing that I can think of that would be simple enough for people to be like, you know what, how does same work in this composition? Like, is he talking about texture? Is he talking about rendering? Is he talking about the difference between charcoal and sepia? Which both of them are a very chalky, powdery material. It gets all over your hands no matter which one you use. So it references back to me thinking about the fact that, I wish we would appreciate, different skin tones a lot more. I wish we didn't hypersexualize certain skin tones over others. And I wish we didn't demonize certain skin tones over others as well. Because that is a very prevalent thing that happens. And you would think that, in 2025, it would have died down by, how much representation people are trying to add to media, but it's still an issue that we go through every day. And so I know I'm aware of my privileges, and what, this has allowed me to obtain, to a certain capacity and degree, and how people have viewed me. And so I don't want people to mistake that I'm not thinking about those things. And so, yeah, that's basically where the title came from with Same. It was just that I viewed these two beautiful mediums in the same capacity, and they did a lot of similar things to me. And I want people to, think about that when it comes to humans as well, too. We are just beings. We just happen to be different tones and shades, but that shouldn't, inform how someone navigates that person at all. Like, they're just a person. Approach them. They're the same. And so that is it. Sorry again for, messing that up, but I'm glad that I was able to, talk to you guys. So have a great one.
Since we're discussing pieces, I want to stay on that topic for a second. And please forgive me because this just taught me a lesson right now that I need to start writing stuff down instead of relying on the phone. Because my phone deleted the line out. I had the name typed out though. The Garden Collection. What was it called? In the Garden?
Oh, Awaken in the Garden.
Awaken in the Garden. Yes, yeah. My love. Now, that collection is unique. It looks like it's incorporated with biblical structures, as well as, if correct me if I'm wrong, was it like each piece and your interpretations of sins?
Yep. So yeah, it was the 7 deadly sins that I was tackling. And I wanted to relate them back to like some of our mental states. And so when we think of like pride, greed, sloth, and, wrath and lust and all these, different sins, there's usually like a negative connotation with them. It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to have that in your body at all or in your mind. Never supposed to indulge in any of those things. And me coming from like a Christian background, like I've always questioned that a lot, because I'm like, well, these are like natural human things that people go through. And like, they're not always as negative as people kind of propose or impose onto the word. Because I've thought of my own experiences with greed, after, a big, giant, horrible breakup, you kind of want to be more greedy with your time and greedy with your patience a little bit as well too, so that you don't end up in that situation again. And then even with sloth, I was just thinking about like how we perpetuate the stereotype of Black people being lazy, or any minority being lazier than whoever wants to be called the supremacist or supreme, even though we do a lot of work. And so, like, yeah, let that person take that rest. Let them indulge in their sloth a little bit. You know, people work a lot, and I remember being in college having like 6 to 7 jobs while I was in college. I was tired, and I felt like I couldn't rest because like I have something to prove, or I have to get through college, because if I take one nap or whatever, they're just going to deem me as lazy and blah blah blah. And then even with like lust as well too, I've always connected it to like my lust for art. I love art. I indulge in it a lot, and I care for it a lot. And for me, it's like a great intimacy between me and art. And like I feel like I should be allowed to indulge in that. And that's not to say like, you know, the other spectrum doesn't exist of like the horrible ways we could go into lust or wrath and things like that. But I feel like we mostly focus on those negative aspects. And so for that entire show, I wanted to just show people a more humanized approach to the 7 deadly sins. So when you see wrath in a calm, seated position, you kind of have to question like, you know, why is that? And sometimes we have the right to be mad at something, and it may look calm and it may look like that. And it's not always you know, blacking out or crashing out now in today's term. It could be you just being calm and pissed off, you know, or sloth could be you just taking a rest and people are taking advantage of that rest. And so with that whole body of work, that's what it was about. And I had a lot of fun doing it because I was able to talk about, you know, the story of Adam and Eve within it with the first piece when you walk in. And I was also inspired by a Kerry James Marshall exhibit that I went to where he did these huge woodblock prints. And it was in the Cleveland Museum of Art. And they were all like right next to each other. And they had the same like perspective. And it was in an apartment building, and you like kind of go outside when you walk around the room. And so I wanted my pieces to do that same thing where everything was on the same horizon line and you were just walking through that mental landscape just to see how these sins interact with each other or not. And that was a really awesome show, and it was at the Maslin Museum, and I have like a wonderful connection with them, and they're like really awesome peeps.
Beautifully explained, man. I really appreciate that because, you know, doing our research, we try and do some research and not just ask a bunch of questions about what's done recently. But that was the most intriguing collection to me. That one and the Midsummer.
Yeah, Midsummer in Granada Gardens.
Yeah, that right there. Those two stuck out to me because that's the one that incorporates the piece with you punching yourself in the stomach. And your death is punching you, actually.
Yep.
And again, it's you versus you, and a lot of these paintings are just you expressing something right there. And those two were the two that I wish I could have visually seen because I like to take my children to the art museum every year, at least once a year, and art is very important. But shout out to you. I even appreciate your interpretation because art is like pictures are worth 1,000+ words, and somebody else as the observer may see something else completely different that you weren't even trying to communicate, but it's all based on perspective.
Yeah, and I love that about art because I've heard some crazy things and crazy interpretations and where people go with my artwork, and I always love hearing them because I can be like, oh wow, I can probably incorporate that in another piece. Or I can lead you to resources of some artist who actually does stuff like what you said as well too. And so I always love when people interpret my pieces like outside of the box from what I was thinking.
Do you what's more fulfilling for you though? Do you enjoy just singular pieces, or do you like doing more themes?
I like doing more themes. I like a very curated approach. I like creating a catalog of work that makes sense together. I really don't do as many one-offs. And I think, especially in this time, like if I do a one-off thing, it's usually for a commission. And I typically don't take a lot of commissions because oftentimes it's like, I'm doing something that's not necessarily my realm. They're like, oh yeah, I want this. And I'm like, well, no, you can go to my friend. He does that, or she does that. I like doing what I do. And so typically with like a one-off, I kind of stray away from that and I like making a whole body of work that makes sense collectively together. And they can exist, outside of that body. So if one place wants to show like one of those pieces from that catalog, they're able to do that and they're able to exist on their own. But that's more fulfilling to me, is creating a whole body of work that makes sense. And it's mainly because I'm influenced by like music, and like I think artists should be creating a discography for themselves.
I was. This is a question that I've been trying to work on after just doing this and interviewing different artists. But I think it would be perfect for you, just because of what you do and how you do it. Do you think when you try to invoke a certain emotion to build out of theme, do you feel like at times you get like similar to actors when they method act and they get caught up in the role and the emotions behind the role, where they start living the role even when they're not, acting the role out on set? Do you feel like you carry in a certain emotion? Maybe you got rid of it, but you had to tap into it for this theme or this particular genre that you're trying to do at that time. Do you feel like you sometimes may get lost in it, or how do you manage that emotion that helps you create the art?
I think how I manage it is that I create a very strict hard line boundary. And so I talked about this when I did a show at Kink Contemporary, which is in Waterloo, where I was literally talking about my parents' relationship and how it broke apart, how it affected, their kids, how it affected them. And I did a performance where I embodied my, blue, sad character. And I completely transformed. And so like, I became that character for that performance. I only will allow those emotions to take over in that way if it is a part of a performance. After the art, it's no more. Davon is not going to be manic happy dude or manic sad dude at all. It's like, you did it for the art. That is it. And now we go back to our regularly scheduled program, because I believe emotional regulation is important. And having that separation is super important so that it doesn't affect my like day-to-day life. And so I don't think I go as far as it being, like a super involved method actor where the dude is like sending rats in a box to people, like, or sending crazy notes. Like, I'm not going to do that at all. I keep it strictly within the art. This character exists in this canvas painting. That's it. This character existed for a 4-minute performance. That's it. That was its place. And I think it may be because like I already am in control of a lot of those emotions already. So it makes it easier for me. And again, shout out to therapy for helping me with that. So that those things don't just bleed out unnecessarily. And so and I'm gonna stop calling him the sad blue dude, but his name is Davon. So if I'm depicting Davon and he's performing for 4 minutes, once they cut the lights and my new stage lights appear, that's his moment to come out. And then once those stage lights go down, done.
How long did it take you to be able to develop that kill switch to separate the two between Davon and Davon?
It took a while. And I think maybe it took a while because I was still figuring things out for myself. I was super young. I was in college. I was exploring all these crazy themes and different emotions that I had that I didn't know what to do with. And it definitely took me a minute to gain like a solidified understanding of like, okay, we got to put these characters in their own rooms in my mind, and we got to give them enough space to breathe and not just be confined to a box. They're able to open the door and go into another room. So if, manic sadness wants to interact with manic happiness, they do that in here. And they're able to converse with each other in here. And I kind of allow that to shine. And then I guess like with how that converts into me operating in the waking world, Sometimes, I might dance at a party for like 3 hours. And, I'm just dancing.
Like
And
nobody's watching.
like nobody's watching. And that may be, the little manic happiness part, saying, hey, you need this. Let's dance a little bit. And if sadness decides in the waking world, like, hey, we kind of sad today. Let's talk about it. Let's write it down in a journal. I'm going to give them that time to do that. But it's always Davon in the front seat.
So managing those emotions and not having a traditional, I guess you would say, artistic background, how heavily of an influence did attending CIA have on you developing the style that we see today?
I would say it was 50-50, because it wasn't like CIA provided an environment where it was easy to have that regulation, because I still had to worry about deadlines. I still had to worry about making an assignment perfect, and then understanding that you can't make an assignment perfect every time. And then also figuring out, like, I'm kind of doing this on my own. And so, like, I'm grateful for my mom, I'm grateful for my family, but I didn't really have like a real support system within there. And it is mainly because, like, I'm the oldest from my mom's kids. And so, like, I've always felt like I've had to do things by myself. And so it wasn't like an environment that allowed me to really juggle these things easily. But it also offered me the time to have a studio space, to do work, to connect, network with people. I found my best friends there. And then I also found professors who were actually very supportive and wanted me to make it in the art world. And so that helped as well. But it was like a 50-50 thing, because I was like balancing it out, fumbling. And it wasn't an environment where I was just able to really just sit and be in my thoughts and like have therapy sessions in class. It was just like, I got to still do work.
So
Yeah.
with that being, to say that, knowing that you have work to do you have a team when you have an exhibition to come? Coming up, because me and Don talked about this before the creative mindset was a thing. My very first collection of clothes I designed, I spent so much time on every piece, the designs, the tags, every small detail, to where I ran out of energy when it was time to sell it. So when you're working on a collection of work to exhibit and you're curating that exhibit, what have you learned about yourself in that process? And do you have a team to assist you with setting everything up and expressing it to the people the way you want them to view it, after already putting all the energy into just creating each piece itself?
Great question. So I don't have a team that helps out with that. I typically will do all of that by myself. But thankfully, like, certain, galleries and museums have like an actual installation team that'll help with that process. But I am very like hands-on and involved, and I have a vision, and I like sticking with that. And so I want to shout out the peeps that have helped me with install, because it's a part of their job. But also, like, when I like step into the venue or location, like, I'm like, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. This is how I want it. If y'all want me to hang this up, I'll do it myself. And for the most part, I do hang up a lot of my shows by myself. So like with the Midsummer and Granada Gardens, they definitely had like a great installation person there. But I was like, I can just do this myself. And so I literally hung up that whole entire show by myself. And that's why it looked like how it looked. And I installed the grass in there and everything. And that's mainly because like I learned how to do that, and I have a passion for that. And the same thing with like, an example with the Maslin Museum. Like, I came in and I was like, hey, I like got an outline and floor plan sheet that y'all sent me, and I already mapped out everything. So y'all don't got to do like too much work. All y'all got to do is hang it up, and that's it. And they were like, are you sure? We can look at it and stuff like that. I was like, no, I'm okay. I was like, just follow this guideline that I got, and it's all good, and it's gonna look amazing. And like I think I scared Emily a little bit, who works at the Maslin Museum, because she was like, we usually will like measure stuff out. And I was like, I already did the measurements at home. I was like, I did the math, everything, all the spacing, all done. You don't gotta worry about it. I think they were like scared because there was a shadow where you come into the gallery and stuff, and they were afraid that was going to interrupt the piece. I was like, no, I took them pictures. I made that math. It's going to look amazing. And so for the most part, when it comes to like me setting up my shows, I do it myself. And it's not that I don't trust the people to do it or anything. It's just that, I like making it easier for peeps. And like, since I have a vision, I want to make sure that vision is executed. So like for King Contemporary, for Maslin Museum, and even for Akron, like all of those shows, like I curated, I made sure I went in there and painted the wall. For Kink, there was like a huge circle for like 2 pieces. And I went in there and like literally painted that circle so that they wouldn't have to do it. And I set up the lights and the stage how I wanted. I think like the only time I haven't, curated my show, or I guess installed my show, was I think for Bay Arts, and that was very early in my career. But even then, I still like took a picture of the space, and then I just like made a Photoshop image of like, this is where this piece would look great, and things like that. But they like installed that show themselves. And even for like when I did May Halls with the Museum of Creative Human Art, I was like in there and I was painting silhouettes and stuff, and I set up that show too.
That's fine.
We were just having a conversation earlier today about just how do you consistently show up as the best version of yourself. And when you gave that explanation and the care that you put behind curating your own show, making sure that everything is right, being proactive instead of reactive, it shows that there's a certain meticulous nature that you have.
Yep.
But you also are personable. And you do it with grace and a smile on your face. I can just tell from the energy, energy reads energy. With that being said, my question for you is like, what are your self-care practices? How do you keep consistently doing the same high level interactions and putting your pieces out there? How do you consistently keep doing it the same way every time?
Damn.
What do you do in your off time outside of doing art just to keep showing up as who you present yourself as every time you interact with people?
So what I do is, I love video games. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer because I don't invest like too much time into it. And I only play specific games as well too. Like I love horror games and I love God of War and I play Last of Us and things like that. So that's like a self-care practice that I typically indulge in. Like if I have some off time, I'm like, all right, I get to play through a story and now I get to be involved in that story and I get to enjoy the media and that makes me happy. And I love that. I also love watching horror movies as well too. So these are all things that are very dark. But I enjoy horror movies a lot, and I enjoy cinema in general a lot because it also informs my work. But I love just watching how a director and a writer can collaborate together to make something so complete, that is so immersive as well too. And they're very unique in the way that they tell stories. And so like some of my favorite peeps are like Robert Eggers, Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Rob Zombie films as well too. I love watching those. And I like watching like sometimes like comedies and romantic stuff as well too. I just watched the Titanic like 2 years ago.
For the
first time. Yeah.
Wow.
For the first time. I was like, oh man, this is amazing.
He could have got on that fucking door.
She could have got him on that door.
I seen a meme with all of the different fucking ways he could have got on that door.
Yep.
Like,
And I just,
hear this shit. He ain't have to die.
he ain't have to. And then I just saw, with my wife, she's like a huge Twilight fan. And like in our first apartment, we watched like all the Twilights together. And I watched all the Harry Potters. I was like, yeah, I like these. These are cool. And so like for my pastime, those are like some self-care things. I also like going outside and just walking. I enjoy nature and I don't really need to talk outside either. I just get to enjoy the breeze, the sun, drinking it in, kind of like sunbathe like a cat. And so
Recharge.
I really like that. And then I write a lot as well too. And so a lot of my sketchbooks are just me writing, like a journal. And like you won't really see me do sketches in my sketchbook as much. I typically just draw and paint the stuff like on the canvas directly. And so a lot of my sketchbooks are just a bunch of writings from me of certain things I found interesting or entertaining. And that's a self-care thing for me as well too. So not the most unique things, to be honest, but it helps to keep my mind stable. And it also puts me in the mood to create more things. And so try to surround myself with very artsy stuff. And it keeps me showing up 100%. Because if I watch a film, I'm like, man, that was good. I'm like, there's a reason it was that good. And it's because they're probably waking up every day, dedicating some time and energy into making that a complete, awesome piece. And so that helps me a lot. And then I think it's the firstborn son initiative in me that's just like, I need to show up and be 100% my best self. Because there's no other way to be. I just have to do it.
Respect.
Yeah.
Big respect. So, what keeps you motivated?
I think my family keeps me motivated, especially like my wife and my child, because I'm like, yeah, I want them to see me doing big things. My wife is a big support for me as well. And then like my siblings, definitely great support systems. My mom, my grandmother as well too. Her birthday was just yesterday. And that's on my dad's side. And so she's a big support as well. And then also the people who actually are engaging with my artwork, they keep me motivated as well too, because I want them to look at more things and I want them to get new experiences from me. And I want to keep creating pieces that they're able to be like, oh yeah, Davon's growing even more. I thought he was already at peak, but he just did another catalog and now this is peak. And I'm wondering what's the next thing. And so that's a lot of people that keep me motivated, but it's definitely the people that really are pouring into me, because I pour into people as well. And like, we have a collection of artwork in our house. And so as long as I'm able to be that person where someone could have a Brantley in their home, yeah, that's what motivates me a lot, just to keep going.
A few moments ago, you answered one of the questions we ask all our guests, and I'd like to ask, and I just like I want to directly ask you this question just to see if you want to add anything to it. But you said your mother and your family, but what are you most grateful for?
What I'm most grateful for, I would say I'm grateful for the ability to express myself in the way that fits me. And I'm grateful for, I guess to flip that, I'm grateful for the skill that I have to express myself in a very unique way. Like, I'm grateful for that ability. I believe that this ability was ingrained in my DNA for a reason, and I was born to do it. And I'm very grateful for that gift, because not a lot of people have the gift that I have. And it may show up in other ways, but I'm glad that this gift is uniquely mine and that I am able to utilize that in the best ways possible and to nurture it. Just like my family and my friends have nurtured me, I'm able to nurture this gift and take it seriously. So I'm very grateful for that, because I don't know how my life would be without it. It still could be awesome, but this gift has given me like a really great purpose, and I want to make sure I'm doing right by it. So I'm very grateful for that.
If there was a lasting piece that you can leave to represent the embodiment of who you were when you were here, what would it be?
Of who I were when I was here.
If it just had to be a piece that represented who you are as an artist, as a person, as a father, husband, son, brother.
Just a like quote.
It could be
Or
a
like
quote.
a-
It could be the fact that you basically writing your memoirs in your sketchbooks. That's what you're doing. Little do you know, that's going to be part of your memoirs for sure. But if it was just a piece that you could leave, what would you leave?
I would leave with, be unapologetically you. You are here for a reason, and people deserve to see 100% of that. And, a lot of people believe that they need to hide behind a mask because, they want to fit in with this group or that group or whoever. But honestly, just being genuinely yourself is going to bring you more blessings than you think. So if you feel like you're nerdy, be nerdy. Like, I'm super nerdy and I love talking about nerdy things. And I was afraid of that when I was younger, even though I would still do it with my family members and stuff. But growing up, that was hard because it was like, yeah, Davon, I don't know about you, bro. But I found that me just being unapologetically myself has put me in so many great positions. And has allowed me to meet so many great people that, I'm grateful for that. And so I would like people to just understand that being unapologetically you and being genuine and authentic and really leaning into that is the most important thing that you could possibly do in your life. And so, yeah, I think that's like a lasting impression that I would like to leave with people to show them who I am, is that I'm 100% Davon. You're just going to get this anytime you meet me.
As real as it's going to get. I like that.
Yeah.
Love it. So for the people who are not following you, that would like to access more information about you, where they can get your exhibits besides your social media, but include your social media as well, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Davon, Davon Brantley, Brantley. Or you can go to my website, dbrantleyart.com. I am trying to make sure I update that as much as possible as I get new images of my artwork and stuff. But those are the two platforms you can find me on. And then hopefully if I end up starting like more of a YouTube channel for like my funny videos and stuff like that, people can follow that. I do have one that have my performances on it. So if you just look up Davon Brantley on YouTube, you'll be able to see some of my performances from my exhibits and stuff. But yeah, those are things you can find me on.
Go to the website, get you a Brantley box.
Yes, get a Brantley box. I got 5 left.
Because you need a Brantley in your crib, so make sure you go and get you one.
Yeah, get you one. It's definitely a great initiative too, because I just am a huge advocate of people having art in their homes and not having to spend like a bunch of money, even though my artwork is, expensive. But these boxes are built for that, so that they're cost effective. You get multiple pieces in it as well too, and you get a unique hoodie as well. So whatever your favorite piece is, you'll be able to choose that and tell me what size, and then you get this really nice high quality hoodie within your Brantley box, which is great. And there's only 5 left. I was very surprised that they have been like hopping off the shelves so fast.
Dope.
Yeah.
That's fine. Davon Brantley, y'all. Appreciate you for joining us today.
Thank you. It was great.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.